Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Alex Cunningham, a musician, artist, and New Music Circle board member. I'll be hosting tonight's intro and leading a short Q&A with Lisa after her set. Tonight's event is the second event of New Music Circle's 63rd season. In hopes of keeping our artists and audience safe, we have decided to keep the season programmed as online events for the time being. For the months to come, NMC has planned out a full schedule of dynamic, highly produced online events, which will feature the variety of styles you know us to present. We hope this will help fill the void of not having live events for the months to come. For this season, NMC will host roughly 2 online events a month. They will always take place on Mondays and debut at 8:15 p.m. Central. These online events will be free to view on New Music Circle's YouTube channel, and we'll keep them uploaded for a period of time so you have a chance to check them out after their premieres. Subscribing to our YouTube channel is a good way to stay in the loop, and the chat will be running during each premiere if you care to join it. While these online events are viewable for free, without any ticket sales, we'll be asking for your support and generous donations to keep this music happening and shareable to our audience. Links will be in the video description below, or you can visit newmusiccircle.org for info on how to donate. Last year, we received an overwhelming amount of support and donations, and that has enabled us to keep these online events rolling. We seriously want to thank you all for your support. On the subject of support, NMC would like to thank the local St. Louis and neighboring businesses for underwriting tonight's concert. These small businesses have all found creative ways to remain open during these times, so please visit and support them if you can. Also on the subject of support, NMC also wants to thank and shout out its longtime grantors and supporters: the Regional Arts Commission, Missouri Arts Council, volunteer lawyers and accountants for the arts, St. Louis University's Fine and Performing Arts Department, the Luminaries Mutual Future Fund, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Thank you for your support. Because tonight's event features HD video and audio, we hope you hit the full screen mode on your computer or laptop. If you have speakers, headphones, studio monitors, or anything to give you a fuller audio experience, hook them up. Tonight's set includes a lot of subtle frequency manipulation, so seriously, please hook up those speakers or headphones. New Music Circle is both honored and excited to present tonight's online event, a solo performance by Austin, Texas-based percussionist, multi-instrumentalist, and improviser Lisa Cameron. Lisa is well respected in the noise and free improv scenes and has played with everyone from Brave Combo, Roky Erickson, Daniel Johnston, and Jandek to members of Faust and Guru Guru. She has also been a member of such seminal groups Class I and 3 Day Stubble, and currently plays drums in the psych acts ST37 and Suspirians. Cameron's ongoing collaborators in the improvised music realm include Sandy Ewan, Raquel Bell, Claire Rousey, and trios with Tom Carter and Ingebrigt Hockerflotten, as well as Damon Smith and myself. Lisa's set incorporates the use of site-specific feedback manipulation and percussion and was recorded in July of 2021 at the Granite City Arts and Design District, aka G-CADD. It's documented and edited by Chad Evans and Brian DeBateas of Foveal Media, with audio documentation and mixing by James Ridling and Tiffany Hendren. We'll post links to Lisa's Bandcamp in the description below so you can check out more of her work and support her directly. Thank you all for supporting this series and tuning in. Enjoy the music. Well, first off, Lisa, that was fantastic. I listened to that set in headphones, and I've seen you perform doing the drums and feedback stuff a couple times before, and I'm really struck, especially this time, really listening deeply to it by just like the wide span of sounds that you get out of feedback manipulation and kind of a simple percussion setup. And there's spaces in that set that kind of sound like bells or gongs, and then you move into almost a proper like harsh, noisy kind of set that's really low end and kind of aggressive, but all in the span of the same set with the same setup. And I think for someone, if you're coming into this with, oh, I'm going to see Lisa Cameron, she's a percussionist, that set, those sounds might not be what you would be expecting from that, or if you're like, I'm going to see an improvised percussionist, I don't think that's what anyone would expect. So I wanted to ask you, what is your background in terms of incorporating, feedback manipulation and electronics into your percussion practice? When did that start? How did that develop?
Well, I've told this story many times, but I grew up as a child in a small town in Kansas, and there were only a few places, to get anything, music related. So I pretty much relied on those outlets. So the first thing that I heard was the Jefferson Airplane and their single Me and You and something Kunil or something. And at the very end of it, Jorma, the guitarist, he does this feedback thing that kind of lasts for about, 20 seconds or so. And I was just like, that was my favorite part of the record. And this was when I was like sixth grade, I guess, or fifth grade. And it was right during, 68, 69, 67, when all this insane music was just pouring out. And I was just addicted to listening to the radio. And I would listen to this and I heard like, Blue Cheer, I really liked them. Anything with loud guitars and feedback. And then I heard the Jimi Hendrix song UFO, which is all feedback. And I thought that was my favorite song on that album too. And then I got a copy of White Light, White Heat by the Velvet Underground, and then that was all feedback too, and I really liked that. I like the feedback parts, like I heard Her Call My Name, or the stuff on the bass stuff on Sister Ray, that Jeff Gale did. So early on, I was really attracted to feedback, but I was playing drums. And I didn't start playing guitar till I moved. Well, actually, I was playing guitar in a really weird way. My dad had a guitar, and I would play it with spoons and almost like a dulcimer kind of thing, but I would move the spoons around and get weird sounds out of it. I don't know where that came from, but that's how it started. And then when I in high school, I was listening to a lot of, psychedelic rock and, the Henry Cow and Captain Beefheart and all that. And then I moved to Denton and tried to go to music school there. And I was introduced to Steve Reich, Terry Riley, and Alvin Lucier. And really liked Alvin Lucier. I'm Sitting in a Room, which is probably my biggest influence, because it's all about, resonant frequencies in a space. So I liked his other stuff, like the Music on the Long Thin Wire and all that kind of stuff. But I never actually tried to play it until I bought a contact mic and I started using it on a bass drum, and I was getting feedback out of it. And so I actually had a band for a few months. It was called the Ultimate Supermarket, and it was me and William Basinski and this other guy that lived in Denton. And Bill was going to school then, and he was a friend of my partner's. So that's how I met Bill. And he was playing saxophone, and I was playing drums. And this other guy was playing synthesizer. So we just get together and jam. And, you know, so I started using the contact mic on a bass drum. And that's how that started. And then much later, in 2004 or so, I had been playing on all these different bands, you know, and I was kind of getting, you know, like, what else is there, you know? So I started doing bedroom experiments with contact mics, and I heard this record that came out. It was John Cale and Sterling Morrison, and they did some jams back in like 1962, 1963, where it's all feedback. And it's really amazing stuff. If you can ever find that stuff, it's on, I think it's on the Table of the Elements label. And so I heard that and I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to do something like that. So I got a guitar amp and just started messing around. But instead of using a guitar, well, I had a guitar and I was using feedback and playing, you know, guitar, you know, in psychedelic bands or whatever. And but then I started just thinking, well, what would it be like if I put a snare drum, if I put a contact mic on a snare drum? And so that's how Venison World started. Was I just started doing that because noise was starting to become a thing in 2004. And I just jumped in because I'd heard Wolf Eyes or, you know, bands like that. And I wanted to get in on it.
Yeah.
And I just started, you know, going and playing shows, and that's how it started. And then I started, you know, just getting more and more into it. But the main thing is that I never changed my my original conception of just keeping it feedback and not adding electronics too much, you know, maybe a pedal or something like that, but keeping it very spare, not using any kind of digital processing or anything like that. And just trying to keep it very simple because it always changes depending on what room you're in.
Yeah. And that's something I really love, especially in this set too, where, you know, it's really clear you're not running a contact mic through a million pedals like a lot of noise artists are doing. It's almost more like, here's just another pure element. Like the feedback is, you know, kind of as elemental as just like one of your snare drums or something like that in your set. It just feels like another instrument. And you really get to see how much you're controlling it versus, you know, digital processing or something like that.
That is how I see it. I'm not actually putting the contact mic on something and playing it. I'm using the contact mic as an instrument.
I love that.
Itself, because, you know, you can put it on anything and you can get all kinds of sounds, and people have done that forever. But I was just thinking, you know, like, let's make the sounds happen on their own just by using, you know, gain and, you know, proximity of the mic towards the speaker and things like that. And also the room. So in that set that I did, the space was excellent because it was partially open but partially closed. I was up against a corner, so the sound would bounce out, but then it would also go different places because all the plants were in there, the wooden floor, all kinds of different things, and I guess the brick walls. It was pretty neat.
That's it. Not just visually. It's I feel like it was also an ideal space. Because I remember the first time I saw you do the feedback performance, which I think was when I met you, was Simon Joyner, maybe 2019.
Oh,
and that was in a basement with really, really low ceilings. Yeah. And I just remember the way the feedback responded was so different to the next time you came through, which was that floodplain where it was higher ceilings, wood floors, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
much more resonant.
the basement was pretty hard because I couldn't really get much response because everything was so tight.
Yeah.
But like, say if I'm in a small room, like this room I'm in right here, which I've recorded a lot of stuff in, I have wood floors, and it's a pretty small room, but the wood floors actually do the resonant work.
That's great.
It's really odd how each space has its own resonant frequency, and I just find what that space is, and I use that as a sound source.
I wanted to ask you about instrument building.
Oh yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, Lisa built and designed an instrument called the Berimbauophone, which, for anyone that wants to hear that, I would highly recommend your 2 albums with Sandy Ewan on Astral Spirits, the Sea Creatures albums, which was, I think that was my introduction to your work, was when the first Sea Creatures tape came out a few years ago.
Okay.
But
Wow.
you play that instrument all over those recordings. Could you, like briefly explain how that instrument works? It's a bowed instrument that also deals with feedback.
Yeah, well, I don't always bow it. Basically, okay. So I've been a big fan of Berimbaus for a long time, and so I've had Berimbaus for maybe 30 years or more, and played them as a shamanic experiment to explore different uh, planes, and then also just to I started amplifying it, and it was very difficult to amplify. So I couldn't really get things to. I guess I could have built a pickup inside the actual Berimbau, but I never did. So one day my partner came home and she said, "Oh, well, I found this box in the street. It was like a wooden box. It was very, solid wood. It looked like some kind of shelf or something." And she said, I'm sure you can figure out something to do with this." And I looked at it and I said, "Oh yeah, I can do something with that." so I built this thing. I don't even know exactly. Well, I had been interested in building sound sculptures because of Harry Bertoi. I don't know.
Bertoya, yeah.
And also Yves Tingley, who made instruments that destroy themselves. I was always interested in doing something like that. So I finally took the time to do it. And so I took the Berimbau and I attached it to the top of the box, and put some wires, or it was some of that well, it's like strings or wires that are flexible, and I attached that to the top, so it looked like basically a gut bucket bass, a 1-string bass, and that's what an idiophone is. It's just a resonant thing attached to a pole with a string, and so that could be a guitar, it could be a bass, it could be anything, like a erhu from China, or any of that. And so I then after that I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to play it? So the main thing that I was doing, I was like attaching pickups to it with clamps, like C clamps, and putting them on different parts of it, and like having several pickups running through a mixer, and then just even the pressure of the C clamps will change the tone. It's really interesting because I hadn't, it's just kind of a exploration of what can I do with this. And so with the Sea Creatures one, actually, I got together with Sandy here, and we recorded that. I had barely used that thing, and we just went in and recorded it at a friend of mine's house. And I couldn't believe how it came out. And I was like, wow, this thing is really cool. I'm going to start learning how to play it for real. So then I started just using that on its own, just by itself, and figuring out all the different ways I could play it. So another thing you could do is you can put pickups on it, and you can also put small objects on top of it, on top of the surface, and those will resonate. And you can just slightly move those things, and you'll get, you know, harmonics starting to happen, frequency fluctuations, just from the slightest movement on the top of it. And
Yeah, I remember seeing you at the Floodplain show. Yeah, just being blown away by you're just barely moving things and how much that would change, you know, the complete sound of the room. It's really fantastic.
yeah, well, I mean, if you move things too much, then you lose it, and it goes into like
Yeah.
I learned the hard way of like getting in front of noise people and just, you know, kind of hanging ten and saying like, I can do this, you know, get up there and avoid the which would always happen until I learned how to not do it. Like, it's a very kind of, it's a kind of process you just learn by doing, you know?
Yeah. So you've always kind of been doing more experimental stuff alongside all of your bands. That's something that's really interesting to me about your music that I wanted to ask you about. And it's great to hear that it's always been that way. Like asking you about the feedback stuff, I wasn't expecting that to go back to when you were a child. You know what I mean? So it's like that's been a through line throughout. But yeah, I think, you know, for like an audience that just watched the set you did tonight, might not know about like the rock side of your playing, you know, the stuff you've done with like Roky Erickson, like Daniel Johnston, and then, you know, your current like psych bands like Suspirians, ST37, things like that. And vice versa, if somebody knows you from those bands or rock bands, they might not be as familiar with this other stuff. I was wondering, like, how do you think those kind of two aspects of your playing, the more experimental stuff and maybe the more, not necessarily straightforward, because I don't think the rock bands that you played in are necessarily straightforward. I definitely think are elements to all of that stuff. How do you think those kind of two aspects of what you do inform each other?
Well, that's a good question. I really don't know. I really have a lot of respect for a good backbeat. You know, like most of the music that I listen to is R&B or blues. I really like R&B, especially like Louisiana R&B, Meters, Alan Toussaint. I love blues. I listen to a lot of blues. I don't want to play the blues. You know, I have played the blues. You know, I played in clubs in Austin. I played the blues or whatever. And it just wasn't what I wanted, but I like to listen to the blues. So those are really influential to me, just as, you know, how the building blocks of the blues works. How the drums are so simple, but they're so central to what's going on. And so I would go see a lot of blues players here. That was one of the best things about living in Austin in the early 80s, is that you could go see Buddy Guy, you could go see Albert Collins, you could go see, you know, all these bands, you know. And it just fascinated me how what the drummer did in a blues situation, because it seems like they're not doing much at all, but they're doing a lot.
Yeah.
They're the drivers. So I also played reggae for a while when I first got here, and that was fun. I really like reggae a lot. That's another situation where you are the driver. If you're the drummer, you're the central part of the music.
Yeah.
And when I got into that band, it was like, uh, they were saying that, no, you're slowing down all the time. Well, I wasn't really slowing down. I was just used to playing behind the beat like an R&B. So I had to be right on time with reggae because the whole band was really depending on that. So in a way, just the relationships between the different parts of simple music like that kind of informs me what I'm doing with like say, Venison World or something like that. To me, there is like an undercurrent of the blues or R&B inside of it.
When did you this is more like Texas music question, but when did you get connected with Roky Erickson?
Oh, well,
How,
that's interesting. I when I was living in Denton, my favorite band was the 13th Floor Elevators, and so when I was in Brave Combo, we shared a booking agent. So I was so excited to see Roky Erickson play. So I went to see him play, and I was like, oh my god! And it was really weird because it was in a backyard in Austin, and he was playing on somebody's backyard. And the minute he got on stage, everybody was booing him because he was not a popular guy in Austin. People hated him because they thought he was an acid burnout. And so I was really struck with that. I was like, wow, they're booing him, and he's like a genius. And so when after that, I got in touch with the booking agency and I said, um, hey, if Roky ever needs a drummer, let me know and I'll move to Austin. And so I did. When he needed a drummer, I just left Brave Combo because I was having some issues with one of the members, and I wanted to get out of Denton. So I moved to Austin to play with Roky Erickson. And it was amazing. I mean, but it only lasted for 2 months because he ended up being committed.
oh wow.
And he wasn't taking his meds. So our bass player told him not to take his meds. And he ended up flipping out. But that 2 months was so amazing. I mean, I got to play, all those songs. He never played, he hated the 13th Floor Elevators. So he would never play any other song except You're Gonna Miss Me. So that was weird. We were just playing his solo stuff, which was great stuff. I
Yeah.
love that.
The 80s stuff is so good.
Yeah, all the monster stuff. And I'm a big horror fan too. So I just, I kind of felt like he was creating a mythology, like an American mythology of, monsters as being like American icons.
Yeah.
And also this R&B backdrop too of like, well, his favorite artist was Little Richard. So every time I went over to his house, he'd be playing Little Richard, same song over and over.
Oh, that's amazing.
Like Tutti Frutti. And then he also had another record, the Yardbirds, Shapes of Things. He went and played that over and over. Just over and over. I mean, like, hey, you want to hear it again? Yeah, okay. Tutti Frutti. But he was an amazing singer. I mean, probably the best singer I ever worked with. I mean, Daniel Johnston was super cool, but he wasn't Roky Erickson.
Yeah. How I was going to ask you, I think that's interesting that you've played with both of them because I feel like they're kind of similar figures in Texas music, or in terms of like people also that have these like very insular worlds within the songs they make. And like Daniel Johnston has that mythology too and recurring characters, and he's got the visual aspects with it. How did you come into contact with him through Glass Eye?
Yes. So Glass Eye was a band. I had seen them play, and I was really, really interested in them because they were doing something different than a lot of the Austin rock bands. They were just playing the three chords, and in Austin, the whole punk scene was like, how many people can you get to come to your show, and you just have a big party afterwards? It was like, how many people can you get to come to the show? It didn't have anything to do with how good you were.
Mm.
Even some of those bands were really good. Some of them weren't, but Glass Eye, to me, stood way above everybody else. So I asked them, I said, hey, if you need a drummer, if this other guy quits, let me know, and I'd love to play with you. And so he quit, and then I started playing with him. And then right before he quit, MTV came to Austin, and that was the famous MTV special on Austin that Daniel Johnston was in. And at that time, he was just running around on the street giving people tapes. And so they did this little thing where he played a song, and then they put it on MTV. It really went viral. And so it caused a big stir in Austin. And so all of a sudden, Daniel Johnston is this big thing. But I don't know if you want to know the story about how I met him. It's pretty interesting too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, okay, I met Daniel Johnston. I was working as a maintenance person at this dorm, Adobe dorm that was at UT. And on the bottom, there was a McDonald's. And so I would like take some trash out to the dumpster in the building. And then he would come out there and empty trash too. And I thought he looked like an interesting guy. One time we just started talking. Oh no, what it was is like I had some books. I was reading some books about this guy, Willis O'Brien, who made King Kong. And so I had a book about the making of King Kong. And so he said, what book are you reading there? And I'm like, oh, that's the making of King Kong. King Kong, that's my favorite movie. And that's how we met. Talking about Willis O'Brien. And, he agreed. We both agreed that Willis O'Brien was one of the best animators ever. But he then just said, like, then we just started talking, and he invited me over to his house. And he just lived around the corner. He said, you want to come by? And I make these drawings and I do this music. Like, okay, sure, I'll come by. And went over there, and he showed me these drawings, and I was like, wow, this guy is amazing. And then he played me this tape, which I think was Songs of Pain.
Oh, wow. So the first one.
Oh, yeah. It sounded like this, like, I always say it sounds like a disembodied child. And the whole thing was that the tape player didn't run at the right speed that he dubbed it off of.
Oh, wow.
That's why it sounds so high. And
okay, so it pitch shifts him up.
Yeah, because the tape player was going too slow.
I didn't know that.
So that's how we met. And then all of a sudden he fell in love with Glass Eyes singer Kathy McCarty. And so when I started playing with him, he was hanging out with us. So we got to know him that way. So we would do shows with us. And sometimes he was getting really big in Austin. Like I remember the big show where he had a big crowd and they were wanting to see him. And he was supposed to come out on stage, and then he never came out, and everybody like, where'd he go? And so he had actually jumped out the bathroom window because he was so nervous.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
But anyway, yeah, he was a really interesting, great, definitely out there.
Yeah.
And somehow I got to start playing with them because every year at South by Southwest, we got this group together of a player from Glass Eye and me, and a guitarist who was in this band Poison 13, Bill Anderson, and Brian Beatty, and then this other guy, I can't remember his name, but anyway, we would play every year at South by Southwest, and so we would just play, and we would have a rehearsal, but he would never show up because he'd always come in late and say that he went to the comic book shop or something. He had to buy comic books. So we never got to rehearse with him. So we would get in front of all these people at South by Southwest, not knowing anything about what we're playing. He just starts playing and we're following him. So it was kind of like Lightning Hopkins or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like trying to follow somebody. You don't even know what you're doing. So that was kind of an improv situation too. And so there's another good story about that. We were playing at UT in front of this huge crowd, opening for John Cale.
Oh, wow.
And so we're like, well, what are we going to play? And so Daniel we hadn't practiced or anything because we never practiced, never. And so we would just go, okay, what are you going to play? Well, he says, well, I think we're going to start out with Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
Played it, and we played it with him, and it actually sounded somewhat decent.
That's amazing.
We started out with that, and it was like, can't believe that we ever got through it.